Welcome to the second installment of your notes this year on the biosphere. This is kind of a continuation of 1.1.1, so we can just call it 1.1.1b. This is just an introductory to producers, consumers, and decomposers, so that we can continue talking about it in the upcoming little units here. So I just want you to keep in mind how these things play a role within the biosphere. And something we have to realize right away, and we'll talk more about the energy of everything really soon, but everything that is living needs to have a source of energy. And the place where the energy starts on Earth is the sun. And so all of our energy, even though we don't take in the sun rays, the sun is our source of energy, and the foods that we eat get their energy from the sun, and so essentially we are getting our energy from the sun. This solar energy allows plants, and really it's not just plants, it's other microorganisms as well, such as bacteria. Some bacteria will use the sun's energy to make their own food, but generally we think of plants use the sun to make their own food. This process is called photosynthesis. I'm sure that we've all heard of photosynthesis at some point in our education so far, and later on this semester we'll be going into it even more in depth, but I do want to introduce it here over the next couple of weeks. So producers. And producers are just what they sound like. They produce their own food. And as I said in the last slide, they're using the energy from the sun. And then they're taking nutrients from the soil, and instead of taking oxygen like we do, they use carbon dioxide, otherwise known as CO2, from the air. Finally, what every plant needs, or every living thing on Earth needs, they need to have some form of water, or H2O. And they put all these things together to make their own food. Now, they store their energy in lots of different places, and really the energy is in the form of bonds, and a lot of times those bonds are carbon bonds. So this is actually carbon bonds. All right, and so plants especially will store their energy in a form of sugar in all parts of the plant. They'll store it in the leaves, they'll store it in the stems, they'll store it in the seeds, and they'll even store some in the roots. Normally this is starch or some sort of complex sugar, but they'll store it in all of these places. All other living things on Earth get their energy from the food that they eat. So a lot of times we get our energy from eating things like fruits and vegetables, and especially corn. Those things are high in sugar, and it's that sugar that gives us our energy, and essentially that sugar is being made by the plant and getting the energy from the sun. So let me go back real quick. Some examples of producers are obviously going to be different types of plants, and we can also have certain types of bacteria. Will have chlorophyll and go through the process of photosynthesis. Some other types of microorganisms will also go through this, but those are the two big ones. Consumers then are going to consume foods to get their energy. So consumers are any form of life on Earth that must eat other things in order to survive. For the most part, plants and photosynthetic bacteria do not eat anything. They are creating their own food so they don't have to eat. All right? Consumers cannot make their own food. All right? And we know consumers as animals. But several types of bacteria are also consumers, and things like mollusks and all different types of animals are going to be consumers. All right, so there are many different kinds of consumers, and we'll study those as we go throughout the year as well. But I just want to create this kind of big picture in the back of your head. Now, a lot of early science classes will kind of stop at producers and consumers, but we also want to talk about a couple of other smaller groups. The first is decomposers. And basically, decomposers are going to break down the remains of dead organisms. And so they're going to basically chew up those dead organisms, and this is a very important role within the ecosystem. If we didn't have these decomposers, then dead organisms would kind of rot. The rotting would take a long time, and we wouldn't be able to release the energy that's trapped in there. So these decomposers help release the leftover energy that is trapped in these dead organisms. And again, that energy is in the form of carbon bonds. And so we can release this energy, and they're going to use some of it, obviously, in order to survive, but they release this energy, and then the other nutrients are left to go back into the soil. Sorry, one more time, we'll go back. Some examples of this are, for instance, earthworms, or some mushrooms are decomposers. So, the last thing I want to talk about is something called chemoautotrophs, and a lot of times we'll just shorten that to chemotrophs. Basically, these are a lot like our autotrophs, our plants that are making their own food, but this time they are not using the sun. Chemoautotrophs are going to use inorganic compounds, and by inorganic I mean compounds, it should be an N. Inorganic compounds are compounds that do not contain carbon. So we have no carbon. These are things like nitrogen-based compounds, sulfur-based compounds, iron-based compounds. You see bacteria often that are chemoautotrophs around geysers. Geysers have specialized bacteria that can live in very hot places on the earth. And these bacteria don't get everything that they need from the sun and so forth to make their own food, so they use the sulfur around the geysers to make their food. Now, the main source, every living thing needs carbon in order to live. We are carbon-based beings on this earth. Everything that's living is basically made up of these big carbon compounds. And so if they're going to make their own food and they're going to survive, they can't just have nitrogen, sulfur, and iron. They also must have carbon, and they're going to get their carbon from carbon dioxide. So carbon dioxide is their main source of carbon. That is a very general overview of the different types of organisms that we have on Earth that all play a very crucial role in making habitats, or being part of habitats rather, and becoming a part of this biosphere that we've been talking about for about the last week. We'll be going much more in depth on many of these things in the future, but like I said, I wanted to just get your heads around these big ideas of having producers, consumers, decomposers, and then chemoautotrophs. So I hope this helps. I hope everyone has a good evening, and I'll see you in class.